All right, good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. We're going to go ahead and get started this evening. Like I said, we have one more class, one more, and we are done with real estate finance. So that's a win-win. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to cover the processing of real estate loans. Okay, so we've talked about the programs, we talked about the instruments. Now we're actually going in and processing the real estate loans themselves. So Mr. Grossman, if you could click over there for me. There we go. So, like we talked before, what exactly is the processes in regards to the real estate loans? Who all is involved in this structure here? Well, initially, the main person is going to be the loan officer. Okay, the loan officer in that particular situation is going to end up being the person that you deal with. Okay, so what happens is Aiden, say that Miss Davenport comes to you and she says, I want to get a loan for $200,000. Okay, you would be most likely her loan officer. So all correspondence are going to end up going from you or from her to you. Okay, so in that particular situation, all of her discussions are going to be from her to you. Okay, now your job is you're going to deal with the processor, the underwriter, and the closing officer. Okay, so your job is technically to talk with all of these individuals here. Okay, so you have to keep the processor going, you got to keep the underwriter happy, and you've got to also make certain that the closing agent's happy. Okay, so you have a lot that you're dealing with in this situation. You're going to be going through, like I said, making certain by all means that you basically, like I said, everybody in here is keeping together. Now, just before I walked into this situation, just before I came into this office, what happened was I got a phone call that one of my agents in this particular situation, he had gone over, and what he had done was the loan officer, okay, had not expressed or told these individuals that there's a loan. They didn't tell them that there was a loan. So what ended up happening in this situation was the loan officer knew about it, but these individuals didn't. And if these people don't know, there's no transaction. So Aiden, had you gone over and not told, say, Travis and Stefan about the processing and underwriting processes, guess what? If any one of these three don't know what's going on, you don't have a loan. Does that make sense? Okay. So the key thing that we want to get back to and what we want to talk about this evening is talking about the qualifying of the borrower. Okay, we need to qualify the borrower. So the very first thing we need to start off with is the loan application. Okay, so the loan application, of course, in this situation is going to end up being their employment and their income. Now, if you work for an employer, a small business, it's pretty easy for, say, Miss Davenport wants to, you need to verify her employment. All you got to do is call up Miss Davenport's employer, Mr. Travis, and say, Mr. Travis, does Miss Davenport work there, and how much does she make? Real simple. Travis will tell you, we're good. The problem that you're going to run into, though, is when you're ending up dealing with like a county. You're dealing with the county, or you're dealing with the state, or you're dealing with the federal government. Okay, because the processes in most of these situations is when dealing with employment verification, you're dealing with the county or a state. Now, the county's not such a big deal because you normally can get to the HR department pretty quickly. But when you're dealing with the state, or you're ending up dealing with, you're moving the, there we go. If you're ending up moving with the state, or if you're ending up moving with the federal government, it's not as easy. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a lot more difficult. So in that particular situation, you have your employment verification. So the application must end up showing that you have employment for that particular situation and the income that you're making. Now, the next thing that we want to make certain of, we want to make certain of any assets or liabilities. Okay, so we want to make certain by all means that as we're doing these situations, that we make certain that the assets and liabilities that you have are going to offset. So let's put it into this situation. Let's just kind of just make it easy here. Aiden, you went over, you have confirmed with Mr. Travis that Miss Davenport does work for him and that she makes $400,000 a year. Okay, so we might check off that one right there. Done. okay? But in another situation, though, however, is with assets and liabilities. When you go to look at it, she owns $1 million house and has $700,000 in debt on that house, okay? But she's wanting to purchase another house. Well, in that situation is you would need to dig a little bit more in regards to the situation of what other assets does she have that will offset those liabilities. Does that make sense? Okay. So you're going to go through in this particular situation, you're going to have your income and your employment. You're going to make certain that she's making that kind of money, but we also want to see what other assets. She may have a boat, she may have nice cars, she may have fine jewelry. That's another one a lot of people forget, is fine jewelry. But there may be other things that are of asset to her. Okay. So in that particular situation is you're going to have your assets and your liabilities. Okay. Now the assets in this particular situation is we want to make certain that these assets that she has is going to offset the liabilities. Now, can the liabilities be more than the assets? Yes, as long as the income and the employment are strong. Okay. So you got to look at many different factors. Now, they are also going to, not only are we just going to take Ms. Davenport's words, but we also are going to verify this information, okay? So say Ms. Davenport, say you tell Aiden that you have $1 million sitting in your bank account, okay? She's got $1 million sitting in the bank account. You are going to get a request or a release from her to go ask, say, Mr. Grossman, can I see her statement? Can I see this $1 million that she has? So in that particular situation is the verification of deposit is that we want to make certain that what she's saying is actually true. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, in regards to verification of employment, we also have to make certain by all means that we want to make sure that they do have the employment, okay, that they are actually employed, okay? And another thing is we have to also check the credit report and the credit scores, okay? So we have to, by this situation, we have to make certain that the credit scores and the credit report do justify the loan application process, okay? So there's many, many different situations here that we have to make certain, like I said, that we're going through and we're checking each and every one of these elements. Each and every one of these are going to be very important to the loan application process. Now, again, we are not going to just look at this stuff and make a general decision. Say I get all of this information. So I come back here. Aiden, you're the loan officer. I'm the underwriter. Okay? So you've collected everything from Ms. Davenport. You've given it to me, and I'm basically the auditor, if you want to say. So I get all of this information. I don't just make the decision. I don't just say, yeah, she's got plenty of money. She can have this house. I don't do that. That's not my decision. I'm going to put it in one of these electronic underwriting software programs. So I'm going to take all of your information that Ms. Davenport you've given me. I'm going to put it into this software program, and then that software program is going to do statistical analysis to determine, are you a good person, bad person, or fair person? Okay.
Fucking iPad, dude.
And please meet them. So in that situation, we want to make certain that we go through and we do make certain that we have the underwriters. Okay. Very key in that situation. Can you click on the next slide for me? So again, under credit scores, this is what we're looking for. Okay. We're looking at the FICO percentages, and we're breaking it down not perfectly nice like this. We're looking at it right here in regards to payment history. Okay. So when we're coming into this situation, we have our payment history. Why in the world do you think, Mr. Travis, that payment history is such a big percentage? Why in the world would payment history have such a large portion of your FICO percentage score?
Shows that you're actually up to date on payment.
Yeah, because if you end up, if we're basing everything, wouldn't it be nice if we based everything off of how much credit we get? That'd be lovely. The more credit I get, the better. So in that particular situation we need to make certain that we end up, that the payment history, okay, is going to end up in this particular situation, that the payment history is going to be in detail, okay? We have to make certain that as we're going through these, that the person is paying their payments in detail, Okay, and we want to look at all these different areas. We also want to have what's called the amount owed. Okay, the amount owed is extremely important as well. The amount owed is going to be your debt that you have. How much debt do you end up having? That comes back to this situation under assets and liabilities. It's going to be this amount in liabilities. Now, it's always interesting to me when a person fills out an application, they'll put everything down, and then when the client or the loan officer pulls the credit report, guess what they end up finding? They find a lot more in amount owed. A lot more. Okay? So in that particular situation, what occurs here is that in the payment history, it's going to show you how many payments and how often they're being paid, and the amount owed is going to end up being approximately the overall concept in regards to what is their total debt. Okay. Now, the credit history is going to be very important as well. What does your history look like? What's the back part of it? How far back do we want to end up going? Now, of course, that's only about 15%, but as you can see, 65% of your entire score is based upon your history and based upon your amounts owed. Okay, so very key in this situation that we're watching these elements. Now, of course, the last two, new credit and other factors, these are going to be your minimal. Now, the key here, however, is that you have to have 2%, okay, or two cards. As long as you have two, you've got no more than 2 accounts open within a 2-year period, you're good. You'll get the full 10%. But if you end up, say, for example, this is where it kind of gets, it's kind of wrong in how they calculate it. But say that Travis decides that he wants to go open a credit card. He wants to open 2 credit cards. So he goes and opens 2 credit cards. Sorry about that. That's my mouse here. In that situation, if he wants to open 2 credit cards, guess what happens? Travis, they're going to hit you right here under other factors for inquiries. And then if you get approved for both of them, guess what happens? Boom, you get hit again. So now you ended up in this particular situation, you had 2 of them, you get hit 20% of your score. Okay? So very important in this situation that when you're making these changes, that you understand that how this works, you got to be very careful. Okay? You have to be very, very careful in how we basically break things down. Okay? So, why in the world, as a real estate agent, do you need to know all of this? What's the point of you needing to know all of this? You ready? Here we go. How many people do you think you'll see on a daily basis that wants to buy a house but can't afford it because they have bad credit? A lot. A lot. Okay? So in that situation is you need to know the breakdown, because this breakdown here will help you understand that first off, does my client need to be applying for new credit? No, because that could be 20% right there. What about their credit history? What if they say 2 years ago I had bad credit? Well, what does this say right here? Old credit's only 15%. So what do we need to focus on? New payment and bring down those balances. Okay? So in that situation is if you look at this chart, you look at this data, you can kind of see that by taking this information, you can help your client to possibly be able to be approved. Okay? I actually am a licensed credit repair individual, and so I do help clients in those situations. And what ends up happening is I tell them in this particular order right here, is that we have to make certain by all means that as we go through this, that you need to know how you can do this to help your clients out. Now, should you go out and quickly hang a cat and say, I can do credit repair? No, not recommending that. Not recommending that at all. What I am saying, though, in this situation is that you want to basically guide your clients into these situations and tell them that just because you have bad credit does not ultimately mean that you're out of it. Okay? What do you think? I'm just curious. I want to survey y'all real quick. What do you think the lowest credit score is to get approved for a mortgage? What do you think the lowest one is? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Travis. And remember, it goes, so I can give you a range. It goes approximately 300 to 850. Okay. So what do you think is the lowest? You said 630?
Yeah.
Okay. Aiden? The lowest you can go?
550.
550, Miss Davenport? Okay, got 500. Stephen?
400.
400. The average lowest amount that you can go to get a person approved is around 580. If your client has a 580, your client can most likely get approved. Now, with that being said, please understand that 580 is also going to be one of the higher interest rates, if you see what I'm saying. So they're going to have a higher interest rate in this particular situation. So again, like we said right here, FICO does have a range between 300 and 850, okay? But here's the thing. This is what you tell your clients. A lot of clients say, well, I'm not going to buy a house right now until my credit score goes up, okay? So they're not going to buy a house till their credit score goes up. Well, if their credit score doesn't end up going up, they think, well, I'm not going to buy. So I've had this before. I had a client tell me this before. Yeah, I only have a 700 credit score, and I need to get closer to 800 so I can buy a house. Okay? Here's the kind of logic I'm going to tell you. If you ever taken any college courses, or even in school, what happens? A 90 or 100 is still a what? Still an A. Okay? So does it really matter if you made a 90 or you made 100? No, nobody's going to know the difference except you. Just like a 80 and an 89, still a B. Okay? So like I tell people all the time is, normally if you're around 700, you're still classified as excellent. So it doesn't matter if you're 700 or you're 850, guess what? You're still classified as excellent, you're going to get the prime rates. But if you are sitting at 699, then yeah, you want to bump yourself up 1 point. Okay? But in the situation of 700 to 850, you basically are classified as excellent, and therefore you will have a greater chance of getting a prime rate. Okay? Now, because of the current situations that we're going through, because of COVID, and because of other things, banks are becoming more tighter on their qualifying standards. Whenever the economy is down, banks don't want to lend money. Okay, they just don't. They like to keep money in the bank. Why is that? Because the fact of the matter is they don't want to have their money jeopardized. Okay, especially conventional loans. Okay, especially conventional loans. So lenders are requiring higher scores. Okay, so in this particular situation, lenders are constantly requiring for higher scores. Okay, now again, they do obtain free credit reports from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So you can actually end up, your client can pull their credit report from annualcreditreport.com, and they can get all three of their reports and see where they stand. And it is free of charge. There is no charge to get your credit reports. Now I'm going to tell you guys and gals something that is extremely important is when I was in college actually, back in the day in college at Glenn, you actually went down there, and as you walked into the student center, they used to allow banks to sit around like vendors. And they'd come in, they go, hey, Miss Davenport, we've got a sucker, and if you sign up for a credit app today, we'll give you $25. Well, being a young, dumb college kid, what did I need? Money. So I go over here and fill out a credit app, okay, to get my $25. That was lunch, okay, or lunch and supper or whatever, you know. So I filled them out. Well, the thing is during my time at Glenn, my identity was stolen. My identity was actually stolen. And a person racked up over $100,000 in loans in my name, okay, over $100,000 in my name. And the reason we found out was the fact of the matter, number one, they didn't have this back when I was in school where you could pull your credit, you used to have to pay for it. And number two, they weren't strict on when you get a credit app that you had to shred it, okay? So what happened was a lot of people just took the information and threw it in the local garbage can. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, if it's got my social security number on it, my address, my name, my date of birth, and all of that, well, Aiden, what can you do with it if you get it? You can go get as much money as you want because you're Justin Nobles right now, aren't you?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay? So in that situation, what happened was me being a young, dumb kid that didn't know how to use credit reports and knew anything about credit, I didn't find out until I went down to go apply for a car, went to go get me a car, and they told me, they said, well, Mr. Nobles, there's over $100,000 in your name. Excuse me? Yeah, there's $100,000 in loans out in your name. Excuse me? Where? I want this money. Okay? So I had to actually go at that time. I didn't have this company to call or anything. I actually had to pay for my credit reports. That's when I learned about Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Didn't even know these people from Adam. Didn't even know who the heck they were. Didn't even know what they did. Found out about these. Started going around. I had to go to the police departments, file my identity theft. Had to go do all that wonderful stuff. And then I had to go in and I had to start disputing with each one of these and tell them that guess what? This isn't me. And you know what the worst part is? You know what's horrible? Is in this situation, is that when I disputed with each and every one of these companies, what ended up happening was it wasn't, you know, Mr. Nobles, we're sorry this occurred to you. It was prove it. Prove that your identity was stolen. How do you do that? How do you prove that Aiden took my information and went and applied for credit cards when I don't even know where he went to? Prove it. And so it took me, guys and gals, 7 years. 7 years to get myself out of that hole. 7 years of my life. And I finally got out of it. And so when I get to this part, when I'm teaching this particular part, I end up in this part. This is that stance that I tell people all the time is, you want to be checking your credit reports every year. The government literally gives you a free one. They pay for you a free one every single year. See, here's the thing. If I turn around real quick and I say, Aiden, do you have any credit? Do you have any credit cards? You're going to tell me what? No, sir. I don't have any. But does Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion know that?
No.
Have you checked your credit report, sir?
No.
Yeah, do you even know what that is?
I know what a credit report is, yes.
You know what it is?
Yes, sir.
But do you know any of these firms?
No.
No. So in that particular situation, guys and gals, guess what ends up happening? You don't know any of these people. You have no clue who these people are. Didn't even know you could do this. So guess what? Travis could have got all your information, went out, and he had him a field day. Yeah, he went out. He went out there. How many trucks did you buy already? About 7? Oh, 4? Okay. 4 of them. So they're all in your name, by the way.
Just give me one of them.
Just give But the key thing, y'all, guys and gals, is that Equifax does end up, and Experian and TransUnion, they report. Now, of course, in your situation, if you get on here, Aiden, and you go to annualcreditreport.com, guess what's going to happen? If you don't have credit, guess what it's going to do? It's going to kick back that you don't have an account. That's a good sign. Okay? But if you go in there and fill out and you got an account, you better go look. Okay? Because in that situation is, if you don't have credit or ever applied for credit, then in that particular situation, you should not have an account. But if you do, then you need to look at what's on there. Now, do you have student loans? No. So yeah, you should not have an account at all. If you have student loans, they end up, this particular part right here will show your student loans. But if you don't have student loans, you should not show an account at all. Now watch this. Miss Davenport, if you don't mind me asking, when was the first time what do you think about an approximate time you got your first credit card? If you mind telling me, you don't have to.
About 5 years ago.
About 5 years ago. So Miss Davenport, guess what? Now let me ask you this. What about your house? When did you first apply for your first mortgage?
79.
In 79. Okay. So guess what? When Miss Davenport pulls hers, they're going to have a whole credit file on her back to that point. So that 1979 to now. Just like me. They're going to have it back 1700s. Yeah.
1926.
Trying to think here.
1700.
1700s. I see how it is here. 2000. It'd actually be 2000 because I graduated in 03, so 04. So they would have it back to 04 for me. So they would have it. Now my mom and dad probably about the 70s or 80s. Okay, so in that situation is the longer you are. But here's the funny thing: they know so much about you, you have no idea. They have so much information about you. But in that situation is you want to verify it. You want to verify it. Now, a lot of people, Mr. Aiden, can I ask what age are you right now?
22.
All right, Mr. Aiden, I'm going to tell you. There's one thing that you'll notice that was back here. Let's go back to this slide right here. There's one thing that's also here. You see that 15% here, sir?
Uh-huh.
Do you want to know how you get that full 15%?
Oh, it's rough.
You got to have 25 years of credit.
That's the one, we checked my credit score, and that's the problem, is even though I have 2 credit cards, I've only had them for,
Short period of time.
one for a year and one for like 4 years, and so they don't, they don't actually, there's no positives to it.
That's right.
They need it for more than 10 years.
That's right.
For extra
So-
working.
If you want this one, you better get it now. Because otherwise, I just got to good. I just got to good status. And I still got, I think, 8 more years to go before I get to excellent. Okay? So I'm telling you, this situation is your history. You want to get your credit cards now. So you can write, even if it's a $30 or $300 credit card, get it. But I'm going to tell you something. So I'm going to tell you. A lot of people make this mistake. They go get a credit card for $300 and it's a secured card, meaning you got to pay for it to have the card. And then after they start getting all these other credit cards, what do you think they do with this one? Throw it away. Just get rid of it. Well, guess what you just did? You start back from that, your last Otis one in. You see a problem? So now you're even in a bigger situation. You see what I'm saying? So you got to be very careful. And like my mother always asks me this all the time. She'll always say to me, she'll say, Justin, she'll say, in regards to my credit card, I'm going to get rid of this credit card. Well, if you do, when was your other one that you got? Oh, it's about 4 or 5 years, after that one. Well, if you wait 4 or 5 years after, what ends up happening? Well, now you push your time out. Okay? So you got to be very careful when you're dealing with these situations. But again, I highly, highly encourage you guys and gals to go to this website. You need to go to this website. Why? Why do I say you need to go to this website? Because guys and gals, if you've ever had a family member have lost their credit, guys and gals, I'm going to tell you, it ain't fun. You can't get a mortgage, you can't get a car, you can't get student loans, you can't get nothing. Nothing. 7 years, if it wasn't for my mom and dad, I'd been up the creek without a paddle. 7 years. So it's imperative, by all means, that you're checking your credit report every year. I actually have it on my calendar that I have the time I checked it. And every year it just reminds me, I need to pull my credit. I need to look through it. I need to go through it. Because you never know when somebody might pick up your information. And I'll tell you, they don't have to be in writing. I could be going to Travis's website and buying something off of there, and I put in my Social Security, and guess what ends up happening? Boom, he got it. Okay? And he goes, opens a card, and here we go. I'm up the creek without a paddle.
Speaking of that, what is your mother's maiden name?
Yeah.
And the name of your first pet?
Yeah. So in that situation, by the way, my name's Aiden Riley. Just to make sure you got that down there. So
I'm going to check my report right now.
you got
Make sure I ain't got nothing.
But again, it's extremely. Now this is another thing they always ask me. Well, what's so important about these three? I'm just going to get on annual credit report and I'm just going to check Experian. Stephen, say that's what you think. I'm just going to get here on Experian and I'm just going to check Experian. Everything looks good on Experian, so we're good. I don't need to look at anything else. Nope, not how it works. Because here's the thing. Somebody could still steal your identity and only be reporting to TransUnion, but not Experian or Equifax. So guess what happens? He did not see this one. So here he's thinking he's good. And there's somebody that's already over here pulled his information. And guess what ends up happening here? Well, he's now, because he waited a year, remember it's only every year, they get 20 or 12 months that they can now, by the time they've already took all his money, it now reports and it's too late on him. Okay? You want to make certain, by all means, that you're looking at all three of these. Okay? And each one of them now have to give you a score. They have to give you your scores. So, Ms. Davenport, do you think that your credit score for Equifax is going to be the same for Experian and TransUnion? No, she's right. They're not going to be the same. Equifax may show that Ms. Davenport has an 850. Experian may show she has 720, and TransUnion may show that she's at 750. Okay? In that situation, that's where we're coming down here at this bottom line. If lenders obtain your tri-merge credit report and use the mental score. So Ms. Davenport could have an 850 with Equifax. Over here, Experian 720 and TransUnion at 750. Which one are they going to use? 750. They use the middle. Okay. So in that particular situation is that, and I've had this happen before. The person's identity was stolen. Person was about 750. They were sitting here about, it was 720, and this one was 600. Guess what happens? They should have been in the high sevens, but because this one was over here at 600, it screwed everything up. Okay? So when you're going through these situations, it's imperative that you look at all three of them and you know your middle score. Now, are you actually going to get the exact middle score? Do you think if there's another place called Credit Karma, y'all might have heard of Credit Karma, but if you're utilizing Credit Karma, please make certain that you understand that Credit Karma is not going to end up in this situation. It's not going to be 100% correct. Does that make sense? So Credit Karma in this particular situation, Credit Karma does give you an approximate average, but it's not 100% correct. It's normally about 20 to 30 points off. Now, 20 or 30 could be up or down. Okay, so it could be positive 20 or negative 30. Okay, but again, Credit Karma is another one as well. Can you click on the next slide? Okay. Thank you. So, what are our qualifying income ratios? Well, we talked about this last night. We were going through this. So, of course, our number one thing that we want to talk about from the very beginning is the qualifying income. So, qualifying income right off the bat is, say, for example, Miss Linda, she makes $4,000 a month. That is her W-2 income. Okay, so she makes $4,000 a month. Aiden's paying the difference.
Yeah, that's what it's talking about.
Yeah, Aiden's writing the difference.
I haven't seen it at all.
I do cash too.
Yeah, he does cash. He said he's going to pay you in advance, just by the way.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, in advance. He'll write you a check.
Okay.
So you're making $4,000 a month. Okay, that's your income. That's your qualifying income. But guess what, Miss Linda? Your husband, who is also going to be a co-borrower, he brings in $15,000 a month. Okay, so in that, and Travis is paying the difference on that one. So,
Travis, well, thank you.
so in that one, in this situation, is now, Miss Linda, how much can you end up being approved for? Well, you got how much combined income? Well, you have $19,000 a month. Okay, $19,000 a month.
That would be wonderful.
Now, Miss Linda, guess what? You and Miss Davenport, y'all go get a job together sewing. Y'all creative people. Y'all like to do a part-time little thing. You may have a part-time gig, and y'all split profits. And in that, you make another $1,000 a month. So there's $20,000. Okay. Now, that would basically be good. Now, say you have a child, Mr. Grossman, who is your child, and you're receiving income from his father. That's going to be more money that can be used. Okay. You could even have alimony, where your previous spouse could be paying you. Okay. But again, all of these are different. All of these that are up here can and do qualify as income. So you can have co-borrowers, you can have part-time jobs, alimony, and child support can end up being classified in it. Now, people ask me this all the time. Well, child support, that's not supposed to benefit the person. It's supposed to benefit the child. Well, technically it does, because if they're trying to purchase a house, that house is going to benefit the child because they're in a house. They're not homeless. Okay. So that's why there's that child support. Okay. Same thing with alimony. Now, Well, I did say, I was joking with y'all with Miss Linda and Mr. Eugene about them making $20,000 a year. Miss Linda, what was that? I mean, $20,000 a month. Miss Linda, how much did one of our agents tell us last night that this person was making a month?
$96,000 a month.
$96,000 a month, and it verified it. They actually do make that.
Yeah.
Yes,
The age of 32.
at the age of 32. Yes, ma'am.
What does he do for a living?
Miss
We
Leela,
are in the wrong business.
Miss Leela, I heard he is a professional counselor.
That's his job, a professional counselor?
Well, that's what they make down in Houston, isn't it?
Okay, so you just not gonna tell me the truth.
I'll tell you, Miss Leela, all I know is it says Financial Group LLC. That's all I know. So,
Okay, so we'll talk more offline. All right.
but yeah, I actually, it threw me off because my agent called me last night and said, yeah, I think I've done the largest lease agreement ever for your company. And I was like, what is it? He said, they just signed a $10,000 a month lease.
Yes.
And I was like, what? So I was like, you gotta be kidding. And I'm thinking maybe they make like $20,000 a month. And she put it down that they're $96,000 a month. So I am shocked. So it must be that Aiden money over here. Now it's making more sense.
Yeah. Bingo.
So, but coming back to this is yes, there is people that are out there, guys and gals, that they do make a lot of different income. Okay. And under this, you can't actually add all of this stuff up. You could have co-borrowers. Do they have to be husband and wife? No. Me and all of you could end up going in together to purchase a house. The one that Mr. Stahl was wanting to sell, what was it, $7 million out there in Somerville?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's our new office.
that's our new office,
Yeah,
right?
7.2 million, that's what we're going for.
There you go. So,
Linda's making that money, so.
They must be a different Linda.
yeah, already owe him $100,000, don't you?
You still owe me.
I'm in debt for life with him then.
But no, it comes back, like I said, is, you know, in this whole situation, is that yes, you could have multiple co-borrowers that make a ton of money. There could be part-time jobs, there could be alimony, and there can be child support. Okay, when I used to work in the family law practice, there was ladies that ended up, they had 4, 5, 6 kids, and they were making very decent money on child support. Okay, it does happen. But again, in that situation is these are acceptable, that's the key word, acceptable forms of income, okay? There also is the percentage of gross monthly income. Now, this is what they allow. Okay, under a conventional loan, if you notice, they're very strict in regards to the percentages that they accept. It's 28/36. So approximately, we're going to look at the income. About 28% of the disposable money can end up being utilized for conventional standards for debt that you have. You can use 28% of your disposable income, or 30% looking at your debt plus your income, your DTI. Okay. Under FHA, you can have 31% income over 43, and under VA, you have 41%. Now, of course, as this number goes up, that 28, 31, 41, the key thing about this is this is the problem. This is the allowable amount that you can use. So if you look at VA, you could take, Mr. Ayton, of your gross, not even taxable, we're talking about your gross. So say that you end up, Mr. Ayton, you make $2,000 a month and you have a VA loan, they will let you have up to 41% of your total gross monthly income. 41. So that's almost half of your money can be paid to your mortgage. Now, what's the problem with that? Miss Linda, what's the problem with Aiden using almost half of his monthly payment to a mortgage? Why in the world is that a problem, Miss Linda?
because you're not figuring the other expenditures like your lights, your utilities, your vehicle, your
Insurance.
food, insurance, all that.
You big diamond ring your wife wants, yeah. Uh-huh. So in that
Okay, you remember that.
situation, what ends up happening? Well, at 28%, if something detrimental happened to you, Aiden, and you're only using 28% of your income, could you still survive if something happened?
Most likely.
Yeah, because you probably have some cash saved. But what happens if you're spending half your income on your mortgage and something happens to you?
It's a little more rough.
It's going to be in trouble for you, right? Okay. So in this situation, the key things, like I tell people all the time, is that we have to make certain that our percentages are actually going to be utilized. Now you'll see down here at the bottom, it talks about special loan programs may use higher ratios. Now that's a problem, because the fact is that there are loan programs that do allow you to spend some of them up to 50%, sometimes maybe more. Well, what's the problem? If you're over here, and let's say you're commission-based, like you are now, well, what happens if last year, Mr. Aiden, you had a great year? You had a wonderful year, Mr. Aiden, and you ended up, you have $500,000 you made last year. Okay, real nice, right?
I like that, yeah.
But guess what happens? This year COVID hits, and you've so far made only $5,000. What's the problem? You're in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're in big trouble.
Yep.
So in that situation, that's kind of where we go into this situation. Like I tell my real estate agents, that as a real estate agent, you're not paid hourly. They don't pay you hourly. They pay you by commission. So how much you hustle is how much you make. Okay? But in the same situation is, like I tell people this all the time, is that you may work your tail off, right? But if you work your tail off, you still might make nothing. Right, Mr. Grossman? So in that situation is, when we come into these situations, is that real estate is a very much what? Up and down.
A roller coaster
And
ride.
down. Okay? So what ends up happening in most situations, like I tell people, is you've got to look at all of these different things and take them into consideration. Just because I tell my clients, I've told my clients this before. I had one client, her husband and her together, combined income, and one of them was a veteran, was about $3,000. Okay? The mortgage lender, of course, approved them for a little over a $300,000 house. Okay? So when a mortgage lender approves you, are they going to give you what you're asking for, the lower amount, or the higher amount? What do you think, Mr. Eugene? Well, they're going to give you the highest. That's right. If Travis wants to make commission, he wants that number to be way up here and not down here.
All right.
Okay? So what happens is that they give you the highest amount possible. Now, with that being said, with it being the highest amount possible, what's the problem? Well, your client is going to start wanting very high numbers, very high things, okay? So what happens in this particular situation is, guess what? We go over here, your client starts looking. It is your, not really your job, but it's your fiduciary duty to explain, if Mr. Grossman was the individual, then Mr. Grossman, just because of the fact that you're approved for $300,000, it's not wise for you to get a $300,000 loan. Because the fact of the matter is your wife is working part-time and you're working full-time, and she might lose her job, and if she loses her job, how are you going to pay for it? So your clients don't think about that stuff. Your clients don't think about all of the issues that goes into it, okay? Your clients don't think about the best one, my favorite one I hear a lot of times is, well, I can't lose my job. I can't lose my job. I've been there 60 years. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I've been there for 15 years. They won't fire me. Who do you think they're going to fire, Mr. Aiden, if you have Miss Linda and Mr. Travis, and Miss Linda's been there 15 years, and Travis is a newbie, and he's a quick learner, and she's making 5 times the amount that Travis is making? Who are you going to fire?
Travis. I gotta get my bean points.
Yeah, you're gonna fire Miss Linda. Period. That's life. That's business. Okay. So in that situation, a lot of people, when they tell me, "Well, I've been there for so long," I'm thinking to myself, just like when I work at the school I work at, yeah, the longer you're there, the more what? The more money you make. Okay. And the more money you make, what ends up happening?
First one to do it.
You're the first one they're going to say, bye-bye. Okay? We don't need you. So in that particular situation, it's very important that we're aware of this. Now, in regards to qualifying the collateral, we also want to have the definition of value. Now understand that value is not always the same as market value. And this is where your clients get this mixed up all the time. All the time. Okay? Value and market value are two separate things. Aiden calls me, I get this all the time. I get this all the time. Aiden calls me and he says, "Hey, Mr. Coates." "Yeah, what's up, Aiden?" "Okay, got a question. I'm showing this client a house, and they looked on the tax district on the appraised value, and it shows the assessed value of this property is $130,000, but they're listing it for $200,000. Did they make a mistake?" And my response to him is what? What did I tell him, Mr. Grossman?
No.
Did he make a mistake?
No, he did not.
Why did he not make a mistake, Mr. Grossman?
Because that's what he wanted to list today, so.
Well, the assessed value in this situation is this. Go ahead, Ms. Linda.
How I understand, when you look at the county taxes or whatever, they just appraise what the property is. When you're selling, you're looking at what's inside of the structure and all of the home and all of that, and the buildings that might be there and all that. So that's where your differences will be at, maybe.
You're on track,
Just
but-
taking a guess.
but let me do this. Mr. Eugene, I got a question for you.
Good.
You ready? Okay. Have you ever bought a car from somebody? Not a dealership, but from somebody.
Yep.
Okay. And when you went down to the county and you saw Miss Davenport here, we'll say she worked at that office. You go see Miss Davenport, and you walk in and you bought the car from Mr. Travis for $10,000. And you go down there to see Miss Davenport, and she asks you, "Mr. Eugene, how much did you pay for this car?" What are you going to tell Miss Davenport?
I gave $4,500.
Why are you going to tell Miss Davenport?
So it'd be cheap when I.
So why are you giving this low number?
So I won't be so much home changing that title over.
That's right. You gotta pay, what is that called on that title transfer? What's that three-letter word we all hate?
Taxes.
You gotta pay that tax. You gotta pay that property tax.
Yeah.
Okay? So in that situation is, you don't wanna go tell Miss Davenport I paid $10,000 for that car, because guess what? She's gonna hit you with a nice little tax.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? But if you go tell her that you paid $4,500, it's a little bit nicer for you, right?
You're lucky when
Okay.
you motor blow when you walk out.
Yeah. So in that situation is, you're not going to tell them what the tax is on that property. You're not going to tell them exactly how much you paid for it, because the fact is, you don't want the county to know. You don't. Okay? And that's one of the key things, especially in real estate, that's wonderful, is that we are what's called a confidentiality state. Meaning you do not have to tell the government how much you paid for your property. You keep that hush hush. Okay? So if you sell your house, you can tell the county, Miss Davenport here, Miss Davenport, I sold my house for $0. Now, of course she's not going to believe it, but guess what she has to go off of? She has to go look at the person that last sold in that area and come up with an approximate cost on that house, because you refuse to give her that information. So her data, do you think it's going to be accurate and updated? No, because what happens? If Aiden last sold in your neighborhood 10 years ago for $200,000, she has Aiden's information because he disclosed it to her for $200,000. So she's going to guesstimate that you made about $220,000. when in reality you sold it for 300. Okay? So in that situation is when clients go over there and they look at Miss Davenport's records, the county's records, and they see that she only put $220,000, the client's going to say to you, Mr. Aiden, well, there's only $220,000. How in the heck is Mr. Eugene selling it for 300? Has he lost his mind? Okay, and that's where you have to go in, and you have to tell Mr. Eugene, or tell your client, that it's not that Mr. Eugene has lost his mind, it's the fact that Mr. Eugene is a smart businessman, if you see what I'm saying. And you have to educate your client in that situation, because when I see houses that are listed close, like if a house, and this very rarely happens, but if I see a house listed at $200,000 and it's listed at 200 and it's assessed at 200, I'm telling my client what? You jump on that, get that house. Why? Because guess what? The assessed value on that house is what? It's the same as the list. That person don't know what they're doing. So what ends up happening is that property is probably actually 250 or more. So there's already equity in that house. Take that sucker. Okay. But what happens? Every other real estate agent in the world that's experienced knows that too. Okay. But your clients don't always see that, because a lot of times your clients are looking at the Z estimate. Okay. Do you think you should ever trust the Z estimate, Mr. Stahl? Why? Why do you say no?
I mean, it's just the formula they use to find it.
It's some formula that they put in, just strange formula. They just, here you go, here's formula. And what ends up happening is I've seen one house that should have been worth $850,000 and they said it was worth $300,000. Okay, Z estimates. Clients go off of that a lot. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that Z estimates are always incorrect. There's been some that it's been right or close. But again, using a realtor that has access to the MLS, they're going to be the most closest. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to sit there and actually give you exactly what it's worth. Okay. So there's your difference between value and use, value and exchange, and market value. Okay. Now, real quick, value and use, a little difference. We basically talked about value and exchange and market value. Value and use is basically, this property may end up, a lot of times people, you might have seen, especially around here at Bryan College Station on Northgate, you'll see some spots that they end up, guess what ends up happening? It's just flat land. It's just a parking lot. And a lot of people are like, why in the world would you want a parking lot there? What the heck? Well, here's the problem. That parking lot probably produces more money than if it was an apartment complex there. Why is that? How much maintenance do you got to do to a parking lot, Travis? None. And how much can you charge if you're close to Kyle Field?
Ooh, quite a bit.
Right.
Uh-huh. And how many people are going to be trying to get in there? How many are going to pack in there?
Oh, wow.
A ton of people. So,
I
Mr.
live fairly close.
Yep.
And there's a $40 parking fine for parking on my road.
Yep.
On game days.
Yep.
And people choose to park there.
Yep.
Because it's the closest parking spot, and they'll deal with the fee.
Yep.
They're fine doing that and paying the fee than they are finding somewhere farther away to pay $20 to park anyway.
That's right.
Oh, my jeez.
That's the thing. They will end up, they'll pay it. And I guarantee you, if you pushed it even probably to $100, people would still do it. It doesn't matter. So it comes back to, again, that location. Okay? I always tell people, I said, if y'all remember on George Bush and Welbury, right at that intersection, they had that apartment complex right there that they tore down. I said they should turn that into a parking garage, and they would end up making bukus of money. Bukus of money. Why? Because it's just walking distance. Okay? So in that situation is the value in use may actually be higher than its actual value in exchange or its market value. See, people are like, why in the world would I want a parking garage? Because you can make bank for very, very little operating cost. Okay? Now, again, there are appraisers. There is the ARI, which is the Appraiser Independent Requirements. There's also what we call USBAB, and that is going to be the standard of practice on how we appraise a property. So when they appraise a property, they use three types. They use sales comparison, they use replacement, and they use cost approach. Okay? What ends up happening in this situation is, if I'm looking to come to your house, Mr. Eugene, and value your house, I'm going to come out and look at it from three different perspectives. Number one, I'm going to look at it from sales comparison. So I'm going to look around the area, and I'm going to look and see how many houses, at least three, that meet your house, very similar to your house. Okay? And I'm also going to look at, so 3 actives and 3 sold. So I'm looking at 6 total properties. And I'm going to come up to evaluation. I may end up seeing that it's $350,000. Okay? Then I look at the replacement cost. And I go in and I look at that situation, and I end up in replacing the property and fixing it up. It's worth $229,000. And then I end up looking at it from the cost approach. And I look at it from that point. And I make a determination. Okay, I look at it from many different ways, and I make a determination to find out what is the best use of this property. Should it be torn down and rebuilt? Should it end up just being sold as is? Or should it, the other one, I'm sorry, scratch that if you took notes. Cost and replacement are together. The other one is income approach. And what we're talking there is this one. Income approach is the approach where what ends up happening is that we take your house, Mr. Eugene, and we look at the fair market value and rent, and we determine if you should rent it instead of selling it. Okay? So we look at it from 3 different aspects, and then we make a determination. We go off of the way that you're doing it. So if you're selling it and it's better to be rented, we're only going to go off the sales approach, but we're still going to show you the other 2 so you know, if you see what I'm saying. Okay? Now, here's my question, Mr. Adrian. You ready? So here's my question for you. Is the appraisal the final price of that property? If Stephen goes out to a property and he goes and he values Miss Davenport's property for $500,000, okay? Is that what Miss Davenport's property is worth? Why do you say no?
Oh, why did you guys listen for?
Mr. Travis, why do you think he says no? Got him.
Because it's worth what Miss Davenport wants to pay for it.
Nope. Nope.
Good question.
If Stephen comes out to Miss Davenport's property and he says, he's an appraiser, not a realtor, appraiser, and he says, Miss Davenport, your house is worth $500,000, is that what her house is worth?
No.
Why do you say no? Everybody's saying no, but why?
Because of the fact that to me, that's the appraisal. Yes, he has all the data and all, but it can turn also, to me, it's his opinion.
There's the word I'm looking for. She stumbled through it, didn't she? Uh-huh.
It's opinion. Opinion? Yes, it's
Opinion.
Yeah.
Miss Davenport, do you think his opinion, my opinion, and his opinion are all going to be the same on the value of your house? Why do you say that?
I'm not really going to ask that.
Uh-huh. Well, think about it. What's the word opinion mean? What's the meaning of opinion? Basically, we all have different views, right?
Yeah.
Just because we're all licensed appraisers does not mean we all justify the same way. It's just like when I do a CMA. What's a CMA, Travis?
Comparative market analysis.
And what's a comparative market analysis for?
Basically, you're finding, as a realtor, you can find other properties that are for sale or just have been sold that are very similar, and then through that find out what you expect the house to be worth.
That is correct. So I'm trying to figure out a price. So I'm looking at these things. So when we do a CMA, Mr. Travis, could you do a CMA and I do a CMA and Stephen and Abe do a CMA? Are we all going to come up with the same exact price?
Hell no.
Why not?
Because you're always going to find different comparables or think different things about what it's worth or what other houses are worth compared to that.
That's right. I often will do that with some of my agents sometimes as a practice. I'll say, okay, Here's your property, do a CMA. When you're done, I want to see it. Next thing you know, Aiden comes in at 200,000, Stephen is at 300, and Travis is at 100. Where in the heck did y'all get these from, you know? And the fact of the matter is that they each have a different viewpoint. They each have a different view, okay? So an appraisal does not always mean that it's going to be 100% accurate. I know plenty of appraisers in town that come with different values. They come with different values, okay? So again, like I said up here, Mr. Eugene, here's that one. Here's that sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and your income approach, okay? So what they do is, we look on the first one, we look at comps. That's what we call comparables. We call them comps. And what ends up happening is I look at sales comparables, and I try to find these comps to justify. And the average is I want 3 actives, meaning that they're currently listed, and 3 solds. And I'm going to look at them and try to justify them to come to a price. Okay, yes, Ms. Lynn.
Just, are you saying it could be that it could be the square footage of the
You're going to look
house?
at many different aspects, not just one. You're going to look at square footage, you're going to look at lot size, you're going to look at bed bath, you're going to look at a lot of different elements, age, all of those things to come to evaluation. Okay? Your cost approach is if we end up, that house burns to the ground, how much it's going to cost to rebuild it. Okay? And then we have the capitalization or the income approach, where we take the normal rental price, multiply it, and end up coming to an amount for that particular property. Okay? Now, in this situation, there is qualifying, what's called qualifying the title. Okay? Qualifying the title in this particular situation is where you're going to have what's called constructive and actual notice. Now, this is going to be easy for Ms. Davenport because she's worked in an area that she's used to this, but most of y'all probably are not familiar with this. If you've ever been to a courthouse, you probably walked in a courthouse and there's a bulletin board on the courthouse. Whenever somebody gets served or they're having a sale or whatever, the sheriff will go down and post something on that bulletin board. And when they post it on there, that's classified as constructive notice. Because what's happened is everybody in the county have been made aware that if you want to know what sale is coming up, you go to the county courthouse and you look at that bulletin board. It's open for you to go look at it. So in that particular situation, Mr. Eugene, you want to find out when the next tax sale is, you go down to the courthouse, you look at that bulletin board, and boom, there it is right there. Okay?
Now, how many people actually do that, may I ask?
Ask Ms. Davenport.
How many do you think?
Well, since COVID, it's slowed down, but we used to have about 20, 30 people.
A day?
See?
Oh, my goodness.
And they come in and they look.
They call landmans.
Yes, ma'am. They come in and they look and they check that out. That is constructive notice. Not just those people can go. Miss Linda, you can walk down there right now and look. And you can go in there, not at this time, but during the day, you can go in there and you can go look. Okay? But in that situation is during operating hours, you walk in there and see what's coming up. That's constructive notice. It's just like a teacher. How many of you ever had a teacher or a professor? They used to end up, especially if you've ever gone to get your bachelor's. I remember my professor when I was in one of my government classes, he had a bulletin board outside the classroom. And what he ended up doing was he would go over and all of you had your student IDs. So you would end up, he'd grade your test, and after he graded your test, he'd put your grade next to your student ID. And he'd go outside and he'd pin it on the bulletin board, and that's how you found out your grade. You want to find out what you made, you didn't get it emailed to you, you didn't get it mailed, you didn't get it called. You had to go to that bulletin board and look at your grade. And if you wanted to see where you were, you had to go there, midterm. I remember before I'd come back home, there'd be nights that I'd stay to wait until he posted it because I didn't want to have to drive back to Huntsville. I'd wait, I'd go up there and I'd see what my midterm average is. Okay, I've got this in my class, so now I know where I'm currently standing before I go back home. Nowadays, what do y'all students get to do? What you do, Aiden?
Blackboard.
Huh? Blackboard. You get to look on your computer, right? And you see your score. But back when I was in school, no. And go look on that board. That's constructive notice.
You're telling your age, I think you need to keep moving.
I'm only 21.
Yeah, you wish.
Oh, Lord. I'm like, is he really
Maybe in his mind.
So, but in the situation is yes, constructive notice is where you tell somebody, you tell them up front that this is where you want it. Like I could, if I wanted to in the office, I could put a board up and say, okay, all notices on how we're going to do new rules and everything, I'm going to post it here on this board. Okay. Well, I could do that, but what happens if you live in Austin or Houston? You won't ever notice anything. You'd have to come to the office to see it. Okay. But yes, constructive of notice is where you basically you're told where to go look at.
That would be your responsibility.
Actual notice is this. Actual notice is this. Is where I walk up and I say, hey, Mr. Grossman, how you been doing, man? You been doing good, bro? You doing all right? Hey, I wanted to let you know that client he went over there and he gave us $5,000. So I just want to let you know. Well, what is that? That's actual notice because what did I just do, Stephen? I came directly to him and I told him. Okay, that's your difference. Constructive is I go over here in this situation and what ends up happening? I put it on the board and everybody knows this is where you go to. In actual, I come to you and I tell you directly. Does that make sense? So I come to you and tell you exactly what it is. Now this next one, abstract and opinion of title. Now this is where Darren's going to peek, his ears are going to perk up here in a minute, okay? This is another area, because Darren's like me, we like to always hustle, okay? So, and Travis, you probably peek up too here in a minute too, because it's another way to get a certificate, by the way. So, so in that situation is that an abstract is done by a abstractor. Title abstractor is the one that comes down. Actually, Miss Davenport, you probably know a lot of abstractors, but what happens is that an abstractor goes, depending on the particular county that you're in, an abstractor goes down to the county records, to the deed records, and they go in and they search the deed records. And they can look currently at, say, Mr. Eugene, they can look at your property, and they can go all the way back to when that property was first sold. And they can tell you who has had that property, okay? In that situation, that individual will then write what's called, well, not that abstractor, but the abstractor would give it to an attorney, and an attorney would write an opinion about it, okay? So when I used to work in Huntsville a long time ago, I used to work for an attorney there, and he would sometimes send me over when it was a divorce case, and he would say, Justin, I need you to go to the deed records room at the courthouse, and I need you to go in there, and I need you to do an abstract for me. And I need you to run back, all the way back to the XYZ point, whatever he told me, and I need you to tell me if there's any gaps on title, okay? And a gap on title is this. Is it, say, Mr. Eugene, you sold or you bought your house from Miss Davenport. Miss Davenport bought her house from Mr. Aiden. Now, Mr. Aiden purchased the house from Mr. Grossman, but Mr. Grossman's brother, Travis, never signed off on the contract. Okay? Guess what? There's a gap on title. Because Mr. Grossman, if Mr. Grossman and Mr. Travis are brothers and their parents died and left it 50-50, and he signed, who still has interest in that property? Mr. Travis does. He has 50% interest. So if Mr. Travis ever came back and said, Mr. Eugene, I want my house back, he could, because he's still technically 50% owner. That's a gap. Okay? So now they normally, a title company would not let it have gone that far unless all of these sales were done amongst y'all and you did all this yourself and you never used a title company. Okay? But if you used a title company, they would have caught this stuff. Okay? But the key thing is to say that they didn't. Well, Travis could come in, Mr. Eugene, and tell you, Mr. Steffens sold it without my opinion, and since he sold it without my signature, I want my property back. And Mr. Travis can sue to get the property back because he is the rightful heir. Now here's where it gets even better. Say that Mr. Travis, the reason he never ended up selling it or signing it was because Mr. Travis passed away. But Mr. Travis left 15 kids.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah, no
He
idea.
left 15 kids.
Oh, they got spread out.
Now they're all over the country. Okay.
Where's Travis?
Guess what? Mr. Eugene, if you want to keep your property, you have to get every one of those 15 kids to sign an affidavit. And you have to go through that whole process to hunt them all down to go get it to keep the property. Okay? So in that situation, an abstractor can make a nice chunk of money. A nice chunk of money. Okay? I can tell you over my years, I actually am certified to train abstractors, and I've done them for a while, gone through them and done all of that stuff. But most of the time, if you have a title company, they're going to do your abstract, and they're going to issue a title insurance. Okay? But there are still attorneys that do complete opinion of titles. And they will send, and this is where you have problems, but they will send their paralegal over to the courthouse, and the paralegal goes over, and that individual does a title search and comes back and gives their findings to the attorney. Now here's the problem. Being a young, dumb person that has never done it and never was taught how to do it, I went over my very first time and I walked over like a little puppy, like, Miss Davenport, where's the deed records room? And she's like, right over here. Okay, well, how do I do them? Well, Miss Davenport wouldn't have said this, but the lady that used to work there was like, honey, that's your problem, basically. Okay? That's literally how it was. Honey, it's your problem. So, but I went over there and I was like, yeah, let's see. So I just started grabbing books and start looking, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And you didn't have cell phones to go over in this situation and to end up typing or any of that type of stuff. So what ended up happening was I just took pictures of stuff. And let me tell you, when they found you taking pictures, they don't play with you on that either, because why? The county makes money off the copies. So you're not, there in Huntsville, you could not take a cell phone into the county clerk's office past a certain point. You had to leave your phone and go in because they knew people would take pictures, and the county makes money off of making copies. So if they go over there and they end up, you're taking pictures, the county's losing money. So they would make you leave your phone and you could go look, okay? And then you take what you want, you go flag it and take it to the county clerk, and she'd make copies for you. So in that particular situation is that, yes, there are some people that do use abstract and opinions of titles. And if you ever work for a law firm, you'll do that, okay? Now, how much do you think an abstractor makes? What do you think, Aiden?
$1,000 for.
On average, about $250 an hour.
Okay.
On average. And you'll go over there, you do about $250 an hour. Depending on how complex it is, it could be an hour.
Talking like $250.
$250 an hour. And depending on how complex, if it's just a simple subdivision, say that they're buying in a new subdivision, you're going to bill at least $250. But say that Mr. Steffen, he's had a property that's been in the family 15 years, okay? And that's been, over 100, or not 15 generations, and it's over 200 years old. That's going to be very expensive. So in these situations there are abstractors, and there are basically people that get out there and they do abstracting work. Now, another thing I'll tell you is that Mr. Eugene, say, for example, why do you want to know abstracting? Well, Mr. Eugene, he's taking these courses, we say, because he wants to go buy properties. And he wants to end up, he doesn't want to have to go and pay a title company all the time. He wants to be able to do all of the work himself. So Mr. Eugene wants to go do it all himself. He's a person that he wants to do his own searches, okay? And he also wants to buy in tax sales, okay? Well, in tax sales, do you think you've got time to go over and get a title company to do a whole search for you? Nope. title company ain't doing an abstract for you before a tax sale. And most of the time, the tax sales are like this within 30 days. Okay, you ain't got time. So in that situation, Mr. Eugene, you go try to do you want to do your own abstract. You want to know if I should buy this because there may be some liens on this property. Okay. Well, you may not want to do it for hire, but you may end up in a situation. You may want to end up doing an abstract to learn how to do it so that you can do your own searches, so that you don't have to use a title company or an attorney. You can just go do your own thing. Okay, so those are the different options that are there. But yes, title abstracting, the course, I believe, I can't even remember. It's been a while since I've taught one. I want to try to teach one, but eventually I do want to, like I say, go into it. But that's the one thing I love about real estate. It's like we've talked about closings and we're talking about title abstracting. There's so many things that you can do in real estate. If you just go and spend the money to learn it, you become invaluable. You know, that's one thing I get clients that call me a lot of times, and they'll say, hey, Justin, what do you think about this? Now, here's the difference is, I can do my own title searches for myself, but I cannot do the title searches on behalf of another client that I'm representing. You see the difference? So I can go do, if Ms. Davenport hires me to sell her house or buy a house, I can't go do the abstract work because it's got to be a third party. But if Ms. Davenport is using, say, Stephan, who's a Keller Williams agent, and she comes to me and says, can you run a deal? I could be retained for that service, okay? But I cannot do it for my own client because there's a conflict of interest. You got to keep these things separate. But again, I can tell you, it's very beneficial, especially if I have an investor, say Aiden here, you wanted to buy a property, and Aiden, you tell me, you said, you know what, man, I'm looking to purchase a property, but I don't want to have to go spend all this money, okay? I could advise you on how to do it, but I also have to advise you that, you know, if you do it and you mess up, you can make a big mistake. If you feel confident enough, you can go do your own title search, if you see what I'm saying. Now, title insurance is basically what we call an ALTA statement. It basically lists exactly what you're being insured on. There's also the Turin system, and I'll let y'all Google that, kind of go through it. We're kind of behind a little bit, but I want y'all to kind of go through that one. We talked about a cloud on title. That's also called a gap on title. And a survey we've already looked at in a previous course. So you've already seen the survey and we talked about that. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. Now, how do we close real estate loans? Okay, how exactly are we going to close real estate loans? Well, the main thing is, and this is what I tell people all the time is that the underwriter has to approve the loan. Let me rephrase that again. The underwriter has to approve the loan. So the minute that the underwriter says, Mr. Grossman, you are clear to close, those are, by the way, those 3 words, you should hear angels singing when you hear this. Okay? When you hear clear to close, you should hear angels singing. Okay? Because what does that mean, Mr. Travis and Mr. Stahl? Mr. Travis and Mr. Stephan, I'm sorry. Mr. Travis and Mr. Stephan. What does clear to close mean?
I get paid.
You're basically about to get paid.
The deal's done, money time.
Now, Mr. Aiden, does the clear to close, does that last forever?
No.
Does it last 2 days? Are you sure?
Yes. No, I'm not sure.
Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yes,
You
it does.
should have stuck with your first answer. No.
No, yeah.
Clear to close basically means that there happens to be that this client has met the standards at this point in time. You get the key word there? At this point in time, your client meets them. But guess what? Your client could go do something stupid, and they do that sometimes,
An hour from now.
in an hour and go apply for a new credit card.
Yep.
And because they did that, guess what ends up happening?
Changes everything.
Boom, it's all gone. Your clear to close is gone. Okay? Now, Mr. Grossman, I got a question for you, sir. That your clients, they always listen to you, true or false?
Very false,
Why do you say very false?
because they think they know things, and if we try and explain to them that they're stuck in their ways.
You mean, are you telling me that people don't listen to you as an agent?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mr. Aiden, is that true?
Yes,
It is true?
indeed.
Oh, man.
We would have had a deal today if they listened to us.
So in that situation, like I tell people this all the time, is understand that it is imperative. It is imperative, guys and gals, that your clients understand in this situation that they must end up, they have to follow the rules. They don't go out. I had one person I remember, and I'll always remember this. The guy ended up, he went to celebrate that he was buying him a new house, and guess what he ended up doing? You ready? He went out, he was ready to celebrate, he was closing the next day, that he went out and bought his daughter a brand new car.
Oh, Lord.
They didn't get that house.
Nope.
He bought her a brand new car. He calls us and he says, I'm ready to close. And I'm like, you're not. Why? You bought your daughter a brand new car. What were you thinking? Well, I just co-signed.
That's all it takes.
Doesn't matter. You threw off your debt to income ratio, it's done. You killed the deal. Okay? So an underwriter must approve the loan. And it is only under clear to close so long as your clients don't do anything stupid. Now, here's something that I hear a lot of times. This happens, and I can see my mother doing this, and I'm not picking on her, but I can see her doing this. She's going to go over there. This is what's going to happen. She's going to think, you know what, Eugene, she talks to her husband, you know, Eugene, we're about to buy that house. You know, I'm going to go in and pay off that credit card that I had so that we'll get a better interest rate when we go. Not a good idea, because what did she just end up doing? She took disposable income that they were using as a positive and turned it into $0. Okay? You do not let your clients do anything, the keyword anything whatsoever, because of the fact of the matter is guess what? They can have an issue. Okay? Now, loan commitment, of course, is going to be sent to all parties, and the lender closing the department will prepare the loan documents and establish an escrow account. The documents need to be sent directly to the settlement agent, and the settlement agent will then prepare the deed. Okay? So in that particular situation, we want to make certain that as we're going through these, we're looking at these in different elements. So, again, very important that we make certain that as we go through, we want to ensure that each and every one of these are taken care of. Okay? So again, you want to make certain that as you look at each of these, that they all make certain that we are clarifying and everybody understands the concepts. Okay? So we have to ensure that the lender, of course, again, is closing the department. It's going to be prepared by the loan documents and establish the escrow account. The documents, again, have to be sent out and they have to be approved. These are all different types of elements that are there. Okay? Now, what exactly is the actual settlement or closing? Okay? Now, this is where you're going to see a little bit of difference. Okay? Though in Western states, they put money in escrow. So in a Western state, you're going to put it in escrow. In a middle or Eastern state, they settle it with an attorney or the title company. Okay? With the HUD settlement statement is going to show all charges and credits. However, this has since been changed as of August 1st, 2015, and that's that all closings are going to be utilized instead of a HUD, they're going to use a closing disclosure. But you'll notice that over in these Western and Middle states, they oftentimes will settle in utilizing an attorney. Okay? Now, thankfully, in one of the states that I'm in Pennsylvania that I'm licensed in Pennsylvania, the broker holds the money. The real estate broker holds the cash. Now, why do you think that's not a wise idea, Mr. Grossman? Why should I not want to hold other people's money?
I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, huh? What happens if you happen to hold other people's money, Mr. Eugene? What could happen?
Misplace
Spend
it.
it, misplace it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
commingle it, lose it, be accused of something. There's a lot of things. So while here in Texas, we put everything in a title company and the third party title holds that money, here, in Pennsylvania, if we were there, the broker holds the money. I don't want that liability.
Well, don't look at me, I don't need them.
So Miss Linda is gonna
Oh, yeah.
Aiden, you're getting your license tomorrow, you're gonna start selling in Pennsylvania, okay? All right, so we're gonna send you up there with Miss Linda.
No.
Rock on. Let's go.
Oh,
So in that situation is that yes, in some states, you gotta understand, just because Texas does it one way, does not mean that every state does it that way. Okay, very key there. Now, what exactly are the charges and requirements? Well, if you look at the left-hand side, the seller is going to be responsible for the broker's commission. Now, this is very key here. Okay, the seller is responsible for the broker's commission. What's the problem with that? What's the problem with the seller being the broker's commission? What do you think? Currently, there's been a lot of lawsuits lately over this. The sellers, it is for many years, the seller has always paid the broker's commission. You sell your house, you pay the commission because the person before you that you bought it from paid commission, so you're just paying it forward. Well, what's happening now is a lot of people are saying, sellers, why am I having to pay the buyer's agent when they're not looking out for my interest? It's like Mr. Eugene, you go over and you hire an attorney and you're wanting to sue Mr. Grossman, but you got to pay Mr. Grossman's attorney. How do you like that?
Don't like that.
You don't like that, do you? Okay. So in that situation there has been a big issue about broker commission. Just Miss Linda.
so you're saying the 3%, is that what you're talking about?
6%.
The 6%?
So it's normally, and we can't use the word normally or standard or things like that, but most of the time it's 6%.
6%.
Seller pays 6%.
Yeah.
3 goes to the seller, 3 goes to the buyer.
Right.
Now here's where you always run into issues. This always happens. It's a great time real quick to talk about it, but a lot of times this is how it works. Mr. Eugene, you sign, and Mr. and Miss Eugene, you sign with Stephen, who's a broker, and say, we want you to list our house. Okay? Mr. Grossman says you're gonna pay us 6% for our services. So Mr. Grossman gets 6%, is supposed to get the 6, but he's gonna split it with the buyer's agent for 3. And that's what he tells you up front, 6, 3, and 3. Now Mr. Grossman goes over, and as he's putting it on the MLS, Miss Davenport walks up, who's in the same office, and sees it and says, oh, I got a person that wants to buy it. Mr. Aiden wants to buy it. So Miss Davenport goes, shows Aiden. Aiden says, yes, I want to buy that property. Okay. So Miss Davenport goes, and Mr. Grossman is the broker. Mr. Stephan, appoints me, another agent in the office, to represent Mr. Eugene and Miss Linda. So Mr. Eugene and Miss Linda, y'all end up in this situation. Y'all have gone over, y'all asked me, or y'all been appointed, I've been appointed to y'all to represent y'all. Miss Davenport represents Aiden. We do the whole transaction, and at closing, guess what you see? 6% goes to Stephen Grossman. Not going to say 3% to Miss Davenport, 3% to Justin. It's 6% goes to Mr. Grossman. Okay? Now, Mr. Eugene, you go over here and you see that you got to pay Mr. Grossman $30,000. What are you going to tell Mr. Grossman when he sold your house in 15 days? And he made $30,000.
That's a lot of money. I think I ought to get 3/4 of that.
No.
Oh, no.
He's going to say, that's a lot of money, and you sold my house in 15 days. You didn't work enough for that kind of money. Give me some money back.
Right.
Well, here's the key, and this is what you got to tell your clients. Mr. Eugene, did you not want me to sell your house?
Well, yeah, but we got to cut that price.
But Mr. Eugene, did you not want me to sell your house?
Well, yeah.
And Mr. Eugene, can I ask you this? What's the difference versus Miss Davenport and, Justin, myself here? What's the difference between us? We both have to make money. Miss Davenport's entitled to 3%. I'm entitled to 3%. Why in the world, after we've done our job, you're going to rip it away from us?
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah, And let me tell you something else, and I'll tell you this, because see, guys and gals, Travis and Aiden and Stephen and myself can tell you, when it comes to real estate commissions, the very first thing they say is, well, can you discount commission? Can you discount your commission? The seller, Mr. Eugene, tells Mr. Grossman when he first walks out, I'll let you list my house for 4%.
I can't do that.
Okay? Well, first off, if you give me 4%, I have to, if I'm going to attract a buyer's agent, I have to give 3% away. Period. Doesn't matter. If I put 2% on there for a buyer's agent, and Miss Davenport, who's experienced, looks at that, she's going to laugh and say, yeah, right. I ain't showing that house. I'm going to show another house. So he has to put 3% to attract everybody. But then in the same situation, now I've got 1%. And if I'm a sales agent, say Mr. Grossman here, he's getting 1%, he's got to split that with his broker. And if he's with any other broker, what do they normally go off of? 1% or 3%? They go off of 3%. Even though Mr. Grossman is making 1%, his broker's going to cost it at 3%. So say that Mr. Grossman makes $5,000. Well, his broker's going to go it off of 15. So they're going to look at that, then they're going to take their split and say it's 50-50. Well, guess what? Mr. Grossman owes $7,500, he's getting $5,000. Mr. Grossman owes money.
You ain't gonna do that.
That's right. Or what happens if, let's say that Mr. Grossman's getting a good deal. He's not at 50-50. Say he's at 20%. He only pays his broker 20. Well, okay, out of 5,000, he just ended up in a situation he had to lose, say $1,500. But now he's also got to pay taxes on that $3,500 at 35% interest because he's self-employed. And then he's got to go over there, if he's going to do any marketing materials, he's going to go over there and do anything else, he's got to spend more money on those things. If he works for a franchise, he's got to buy his own signs, his own lock boxes, and all this stuff. So by the time he's all done, Mr. Grossman, congratulations, you made $100.
Can I say something?
Yes, Miss Linda.
I think you better go find that $96,000 person that makes it a week.
That's right. That's right. See, but people don't see that stuff because the fact of the matter is it's fine if me as a real estate broker, if I go over there and I'm handling the whole situation myself and I have no agents, that's different. But if I have agents and I have operating costs and I have all this, 1% ain't worth my time. We one time sat down, we actually had a referral system. Our referral system takes 35%. So right off the bat, if you're getting 1%, 35% of that's going away. Then your broker takes your cut, then your taxes, then your expenses, then everything else. So by the end of the day, Mr. Grossman, here's your $1. Congratulations for your $1. Okay? You worked 30 days, but we gave you $1. Okay? There's a reason I always tell people, you don't just go in here and try to make your commissions cheap. Because by the time you go through this, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that agents don't think about. Okay? That's one of the key things. So your sellers, of course, are going to be charged the broker commission. But when it comes to 6%, that's a lot of money to them. They don't want to pay 6%. They also have to pay the transfer tax. That's where you change that deed over. They have to pay the recording fees, whatever recording fees there are with the county, and those aren't cheap. You have to pay your buyer and borrower. I mean, the buyer-borrower have to pay for the appraisal, the credit report, the insurance, and any other type of charges that are out there. You also have to have your title insurance and your recording fees. These are all the buyers. Now, let me explain something here. Can these, Mr. Aiden, do they always have to be in this order? Could the seller pay the appraisal?
Yep.
Could the seller pay the title insurance?
Yep.
Could the buyer pay possibly recording the transfer fees?
Yep.
Yeah. This is negotiable. But again, this is the standard. So on the test, what should you do?
Stand.
This is the standard. In real life, there possibly could be discussions. Okay? Prorations. Proration basically means we prorate the amount. So if Miss Linda, you lived in a property for 12 months, you're going to pay taxes for 12 months. But if you lived in the property 6 months, guess what?
You only pay 6 months.
You're only going to pay your 6 months, and they pay their 6. Now here's my question. Mr. Eugene, who pays the day of closing? you're buying, or Mr. Davenport's buying your house. The day of closing, you're the seller, Mr. Davenport's buyer. Who pays for the taxes, interest, and all for the day of closing? The seller or the buyer?
It's the seller.
The seller pays it because you are still legal owner of that property the day of closing. So the seller is going to be the one that pays the day of closing for all of the interest, taxes, insurance, utilities, condominium, homeowner association fees, deposit, all of this, you're paying the day of closing. The next day, the buyer picks it up. Okay? And proration, basically, they take the days and they break them down.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you were talking about the paying of the closing and whatnot,
Uh-huh.
when there is like an active bid, the buyers could say they'll pay for the closing to try to outbid someone, right?
Yes, ma'am. And that happens a lot.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, good question actually there. In regards to servicing the loan. Now understand, it is the responsibilities that the principal interest is collected and taxes and insurance is going to be collected and paid out. So when you purchase a loan or purchase a house, the title company is going to be responsible for collecting a check for the principal and interest. They have to collect it, and then they have to pay out any of the stuff that is required for the previous note. Any profits will be cut to the seller. Okay? Now, again, it is also the responsibility of the buyer to make sure, and the lender to make sure that the buyer has collected their amounts that they have to pay. Okay? There also can be assignments, which are where loans are going to be sold to the secondary market. Some loans, after they're purchased, are going to be sold to the secondary market. And the originator does retain servicing for the fee. Okay? They also can collect late payments and notify borrowers when the loan is sold with a loan transfer disclosure statement. Okay? So in this situation, what ends up happening is that we end up, there's a lot of different things in this particular concept that you need to be aware of. Because a lot of the matters that we talked about today are huge. They are huge in regards to the material. You have to be aware when you're closing a loan, there's a lot of things that goes into this. There's actually, I think I've talked about this earlier to some people. How many steps, Mr. Grossman, is it into the entire real estate process? How many steps does a real estate agent do?
I think it's 80, right?
Nope, add a 1 in front of it.
81.
Nope, 180.
180.
There's 180 steps that a real estate agent does prior to closing a loan. When I first walk in, and if I sit down with Miss Davenport, and I first sit with her, I've probably already, Miss Davenport, done about 20 of those steps.
And your client doesn't even know.
Yep, and your client has no idea that you just did those. Because what's the problem? Well, when Miss Davenport ends up, when she calls me and says, Justin, I'm thinking about selling my house, do I just go out there willy-nilly and just sit down and talk to Miss Davenport?
Nope.
No. No. Miss Davenport, what would you do if I walked to your house, ma'am, and I sit down and go, okay, you want to sell your house? Okay, well, how much you want to sell it for? Well, I don't know. That's why I hired you. I don't know. Well, that's coming out here to talk to you. You're going to be like, hit the door. You know what I'm saying? So I have to do what? I have to look at the house. I got to look at the market. I've got to run searches. I got to run a comp. I got to make certain not only do I have those things, but I got to have my presentation together. I've got to make certain that my data has been pulled correctly. I've got to pull some of the tax reports. I've got to pull deed restrictions. I got a lot of things that I've got to pull and go through and read prior to the day I sit down with Miss Davenport. I cannot just go out there willy-nilly and sit down and say, oh, Miss Davenport, you want to sell your house? How much you want to sell it for? $600,000? Okay, $600,000. We're good. Because if it was like that, what would happen? The MLS would look like what, Aiden? If we just willy-nilly went around, what would happen to it?
Looks like crap.
It looked like crap, wouldn't it? Because I guarantee you, if I go sit down with Mr. Eugene back there and say, hey, Mr. Eugene, how much you want to sell your house for?
$2 million.
2 million. Okay, we'll just throw 2 million on it. Sounds good, right?
That place be sitting there for life.
That place be sitting for life, right? Okay. So in that situation, like I tell people all the time,
You sure ain't got no oil under it. Or no.
My looks would work.
your looks.
You sure ain't go broke for sure.
Man,
Man, hey, you might want to move, bro.
it's getting hot back here.
But the key thing is in this situation, guys and gals, it's like I said, is that there's a lot of things that goes behind it. There's a lot of things behind the scenes. And then the moment that you get that listing presentation, what happens, Mr. Grossman? Does it get easier after you've done about 20 things prior to seeing her?
Not really.
No, what happens? You get what? A lot more work, don't you? A ton. And a lot more headaches. And a lot more things. See, guys and gals, in real estate, people just think that this is what they think real estate is. We've seen it all on HGTV. And this is it. This is it.
Yeah, like this.
Walk in, I meet Aiden, here we go. Hi, Mr. Aiden, my name's Justin Nobles. How are you, sir?
Good.
Nice to meet you, sir. All right, you want to look at some properties, and you've already seen the 3 that you want. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go look at them. Ooh, they look pretty. Okay, which one do you want, Mr. Aiden?
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay, Mr. Aiden, we're getting number 2. Okay, Mr. Grossman, number 2. Okay, we want to buy that. Everything good? Okay, we're good. Okay, we're closed. Congratulations on your house, Mr. Aiden.
Beautiful.
Does that work that easy, Mr. Grossman?
No.
No. What happens, Mr. Grossman? Give
Can
us-
it though? Can it?
Can it? How's it really go, Mr. Aiden or Mr. Stephan?
A lot of people and bickering and decision making.
Yeah.
How many headaches? How many bottles of ibuprofen?
I was gonna say bottles of liquor, but
Bottles of liquor?
Oh, man.
quite a few.
Quite a few. So, but no, it is. It's see a lot of times in real estate, your clients don't see what you do behind the scenes. They don't see the numerous phone calls that you make of negotiating, the numerous times that you're on the phone, and I've had this happen, guys and gals. I'll be honest with you. I've had it where Mr. Eugene, the only way he's selling his house to Miss Davenport is if he goes over there and he ends up, Miss Davenport, pays an extra $5,000. Well, Mr. Eugene ends up in this situation. He's been such a pain in my neck, okay? He's just driving me nuts, and he's only paying 4% commission. And so Stephan's getting 3 and I'm getting 1. And here I'm over here looking at, well, for me to make this work, I'm gonna have to give Mr. Eugene his $5,000 back that I'm gonna make it closing, which I'm not gonna make a dime out of this transaction. And then Miss Davenport will get the house. But man, that Mr. Eugene's been driving me crazy. Maybe I'll just take that or give him that 5,000 just to get rid of it. Okay? It's like that. Those are conversations that you'll have sometimes where you end up and you're thinking, well, I got 3%, but man, I might as well just give 2% away just so I can get this deal done and be finished with it. See, there's a lot of things in real estate, and I'm not saying this to scare people off, because I guarantee you, it doesn't matter what field you get into. If I ask any of you in your job that you've been in or that you are currently in, if I ask you how's your job, think of the worst day you had, you probably still would count it as I can deal with this real estate stuff. You know what I'm saying? So in the situation is that's how life is. You're going to have these ups and downs, okay? But what I'm saying in this situation is you've got to be aware of that you're going to be dealing with a lot of different areas, a lot of different aspects, okay? And so it is imperative by all means that you make certain that you go through here and that you have all of your information and that you are prepared. Because I'm going to tell you guys and gals, as you get busy in this industry, things start falling through the cracks. There's a lot of things that have issues. There are times that you go out and that you're going to show properties. You're going to show, my mother can tell you, I had one lady, loved her to death, sweet lady, loved her to death. And I showed her probably at least 40 or 50 properties myself. One of my other agents showed probably 20, 30. Then another agent picked up and helped me while I was out of town and showed probably another 10 or 20. So this woman probably saw 100 properties. 100 properties. and then ended up deciding to go use the builder and cut me out. 100 properties. And did not end up, I made not one penny for all those times. And there was at one point, I still always remember this. There was at one point that I had, we thought gout. And if you don't know what gout is, it's horrible. But I couldn't walk on my foot. Okay, I couldn't walk. And I was on crutches showing this woman houses. I had to have one of my friends drive me to the property so that I could get to the property, and I got out and I was on crutches showing properties. Okay? For all of that headache, I got not one penny. Not one penny. Okay? That's part of real estate.
But look at all the experience that you
Of
have.
course, and that's what I'm getting to. I learned a lot, and I saw a lot. Do you know because of that woman, I showed 100 properties? Sure freaking enough, I'm not kidding you, 2 weeks after she ended up cutting me out and everything, 2 weeks later, a woman was ending up, while I was at lunch one time at Razoo's, was talking about looking for a property for a 4-bed, 3-bath house over on South College. I immediately, because I had shown this woman 100 properties, knew exactly the property she was looking for. And I went over there, and guess what I ended up doing? I went over there and I walked up, I gave her my card, and I said, hey, I've got a property that I know of that I'd like to show you. Would you like to go look at it? And the lady's like, sure, certainly. We went over and looked at it. She went in. She was a cash buyer. She put cash in, and immediately I had that money real quick. I learned, we actually closed in 15 days, and I made my money. But I tell you this. Yeah, you've seen every property out there, and yes, you will have difficult clients. But let me say this real quick. Mr. Eugene, you've worked at your job. Is your job hunky-dory? Everything's perfect out there, no problems? No? What? Why are you laughing? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that situation is you're always going to have problems, right?
Oh.
And you're always going to have difficult people and difficult clients. Is there days that you come home and you just want to say, F it all, I quit?
I've heard that quite a lot.
Quite a lot, right? Right? So in that situation that's life. That's how it is. But see, in this industry, the difference is when you go back to your work, do you have a potential to make a ton of money the next client? Or are you still getting the same hourly wage?
Well, you get bonuses too.
True, but I'm still saying, you're still set at that rate.
Right.
So like I tell people this, guys and gals, I've been in this long enough where I've had a client that was a pain in the you-know-what and turned around and like I said, I got a deal. And then after that, 3 more hit me. So in this industry, it goes up and then it goes down. Okay? But I'm going to tell you, while it's up, you may make $40,000, $50,000. Like I tell people this all the time. There are some people that work jobs for $40,000 a year. That's a ton. That's 52 weeks of work. That they're, say 50 weeks with the holidays. 50 weeks of work, they work 40 hours a week, and they make $40,000. If you go out and you happen to just hit one good client, like I always tell people, you just hit $1 million, Aiden, just $1 million. That's $30,000 in commission. And in Bryan College Station, the average house is 250. So how many do you need to sell to equal $1 million? 4. You sell 4 houses, and how many months are there? 12. You got very good odds in your favor, where you could sell 4 houses and make almost what a person has to work every single day, or Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So, in this industry, you're going to have these different situations, but it is imperative by all means that you're aware of this material, because you don't quit, you keep going. That's life. That's how it is. But I want to take that moment to explain to this, that just because you see HGTV does not mean it's that simple. I guarantee you, I could have Miss Heather come on here and she can give you a book. Me and Miss Heather need to write our book still, because she has plenty of stories for you. Plenty, just like I do. I could sit down and tell you stories all night about craziness that I've dealt with. But with that being said, tomorrow is our last day. We have one last chapter. I don't know why he's saying thank you. Well, Miss Nobles, for you, you're going to have homework over the weekend.
Oh,
Okay?
no way.
But for you, Miss Nobles, I talked to Miss Leela and she says it's fine.
Miss Leela is not in this conversation.
No, Miss Leela said it's
Woo-hoo.
Don't put me in that mess.
She said extra writing assignments.
No, that's coming out of your mouth.
So, but yeah, for the night, we're gonna go ahead and call it a class. We will pick back up for our last class tomorrow. And then y'all, guess what? Those of you that have been with me since day one, you're halfway through the program. Halfway,
I keep hearing
officially.
that halfway through,
Yep.
it seems like you ain't
You're
never
almost
get out
there.
halfway.
You're almost there. All right.
So how long did this, class, how long is the total class?
So there's 6 classes total. There are total 6, and there are 2 weeks. We run them 2 weeks is what we end up doing. So, yeah, you can go ahead. We're going to call class tonight. Those of you that are done, y'all can still listen. Go ahead and stop the recording.